C is the language that powers the operating systems, microcontrollers, and almost everything close to hardware. But most people quit learning C because it's taught the wrong way. In this video, in the next few minutes, I'll show you C clearly, logically, and without fear. Let's start. C is a compiled procedural programming language that gives you direct control over memory and hardware. There are no safety nets here, and that's exactly why C is so powerful. Now let's get into our first program, which is to print the words "Hello World." For beginners, I propose that we use this software called CodeBlocks since it comes with the inbuilt editor and compiler together, so it's easier for beginners. So you open CodeBlocks and then you go to Create New Project and then Console Application, Go. Here we have to select which language we want to use. So since we are using C, we select C and say Next. And then you can write your project title. So I'm going to call it Test C, and then select where you want it to be saved and click on Next. Next, you have to select the compiler. So we are going to go with what's there on default, the GNU GCC compiler, and then Finish. Once that's done, you go here and click on this main.c, the source file, and you get this already completed program, this simple program. So since you're going to start from scratch, I'm just going to remove that. And then let's start typing our program. So when you use C, first you need to import a library of, let's say, tools. So for that, you're going to include this toolbox or this library called stdio. It's the standard input-output library, and it's called a header file. So this is basically going to contain all of the tools, functions, and all that we require to actually do our input-output in our program. And then we write the main function, which is main. For now, let's just think of this function, this structure, as somewhere we are going to write all of our code inside. And C is going to automatically compile and run the program that you're going to write inside this function. So there's a lot more to functions than what I just explained. So we'll get into that in the next coming videos. So for now, just think of this where you're going to include all of your main code. So inside this main function, we'll give a small indentation because it's important. And then keep in mind that all the code inside this function must be enclosed within these brackets. So next, we want to print something called Hello World. So for that, we are going to write this function, this inbuilt function called printf bracket. And inside, we are going to write down what we want to print. So I want to print the words Hello World. And keep in mind that every line in C must be ended with this semicolon. And after that, we just type return 0. So for now, really, you don't need to worry about what this return 0 is because it comes in functions. It's what the value you're going to return from the function, the output of the function, you may say. And since we have the output defined as an integer here, we need to return an integer, otherwise we will be getting an error. So for that, now just think of it as including just return 0. We'll get into functions later on. So now this is going to print us our words Hello World. So if you want to compile, you first build it from here and see, we can see that we get an error here. The reason that we get an error here is because return 0, we have not ended it with a semicolon. So you include the semicolon and again build it. And when you build it, you can see here, over here, that we get 0 warnings, which means it has been compiled properly. then it's simply a matter of running. When you run, this opens and you can see the words hello world has been printed. And it gives some additional information also, which is not really important right now. So congratulations, you have done and written your first program to print the words hello world. Now let's get into something a bit more important. So let's imagine that I want to store my age in a variable, or basically in my memory. So what I do is I'm going to write int age equals, and I give a random age, let's say 20 and semicolon. So a variable is simply a name of a location in the memory where we store data. And here age is a variable and it stores the value 20 in it. But notice something important. Before the variable name, we wrote int. In C, you must tell the computer exactly what type of data you are going to store in your variable. And this is not optional. And this type of data is what we call the data type. So next, if I want to store something like a float, I'm going to type float voltage, since I want to store something like a voltage, equals 3.3 and then semicolon. So here float is used to store decimal numbers, and the computer knows that it needs to allocate enough memory to actually handle this fraction. And then next, let's imagine I want to store a character. So I'm going to type char and grade equals, so I'm going to store grade in which is going to be A. Now notice that here I have typed char because I want to store a single character, and also notice that characters use single quotes in C, as you can see over here. So to summarize, int is for whole numbers, float is for decimal values, and char is for single characters. C does not guess your data type, and you decide it, and the computer needs to know exactly what you want. Now let's see how a C program takes input from the user and displays output. First, let's declare a new variable called x, an integer. Int x and semicolon. So right now it exists in the memory because it has been declared, but it has no value in it yet. Next, let's write down the line that actually takes the input. So this I must do inside this name. So basically I write scanf bracket, and I end it also. And inside the brackets, which is what we are going to give to the function, we write within commas, inverted commas, percentage d, comma, ampersand, and x. This line reads an integer value from the keyboard and stores it in x. Now pay very close attention to this next part I'm going to explain. Scanf does not take the value of the variable. It takes the address of the variable. That is where exactly the location in the memory where this is stored. That ampersand is not a decoration. It is a memory. By writing ampersand x, we are telling the computer where in the memory the input should be stored in. So next, we have taken the input, and next we want to write down the output. And I've done a small mistake here. It should be a comma here. So now output, just like last time, printf brackets, and then I'm going to close it with a semicolon, and then now printf always outputs characters, strings rather. So basically it gives only text. Therefore, we put this thing called a format specifier, which I'll explain more on later. So we need speech marks there, followed by what we want to print, x. So once the value is stored, printf simply reads it out and prints it to the screen. So scanf needs an address and printf needs a value. Next, we need to understand what exactly this format specifier is. It tells C how to interpret the data. So %d means take an integer value and display it here. Because x is an integer, we use %d. The format specifier must match the data type. For example, if it was a float, it's going to be %f. If it was a character, it shall be %c. So let's run this now. So we build it here and we see we get no errors. And when we run it, I get this screen and I'm told to basically enter something that I want. So since it's x, we had to enter an integer. I'm going to enter 20 and then enter. And as you can see, I entered 20 and it printed back 20. So just like that, you have learned how to use input and output in a C program. Now let's look at how C makes decisions. So far, our programs run line by line from top to bottom. But real programs need to choose what to do. Suppose I want to write a program where I define a variable called x. So int x, it is an integer, and I'm going to give the value 10 and store it in x. And I want to write a program where the program decides that if the value of x is greater than 0, then it outputs positive, and if the value is greater than is less than 0, it outputs negative. So now here you can see the program needs to make decisions. So for this, it's actually quite simple. We write if bracket. So please go through the syntax because this is quite important in C. X greater than 0. So if x greater than 0, then we want to do something. So for that, then instead of then, we write this bracket, then print f positive, else, so if it is not greater than 0, which means it's negative, so print f negative. I believe this is quite straightforward. It's called an if-else statement. The condition is written inside the parenthesis. And here we are asking a simple question. Is x greater than 0? So we are given the two answers. If it's greater than 0, do this, print positive. If not, print negative. Now let's run this. So I go to build. I need to close this previous command line. And then I go to build. I build it. I get no errors. Therefore, I can run it now. When I run it, I get this. Because I already said that x is equal to 10 and the program identified that it's greater than 0. Therefore, I got positive. Suppose I change the value of 10, x to, let's say, minus 10. Now it's less than 0. So let's compile this again, build, and run. As you can see, it identified it as negative. So with that, I'm sure you now understand how to use conditional statements in C programs. Now let's see how you can use loops in C to do something repetitive, useful, and visible. Suppose a case where I want to print the name of this channel, Mindex, 5 times. So it can be quite unuseful and unproductive to actually write the print statement 5 times. So what we can do is we are going to use loops. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called the for loop, which loops for a fixed predefined amount of times. So I'm going to write for and then bracket. Inside the bracket, int I equals 0, semicolon, I less than 5, semicolon, and I plus plus. So I'll get into what actually this means in a while. And then I inside these brackets, I define what I really want to do. So I want to print the name word by Mindex 5 times. Print f within speech marks mind x, and I include this character, which is called a new line character. It basically ensures that each time I print, you go to a new line so that it prints one beneath the other. So this loop will print the word Mindex 5 times. And here's how it works. I starts at 0. As long as I is less than 5, the loop keeps running. Each time the loop runs, printf prints Mindex on a new line. Because the loop runs for I equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, the word is printed exactly 5 times. So first you define it as 0, I equals 0. Then the loop checks whether it's less than 5. If it's less than 5, it runs. And then it increments by 1. And then I is equal to 1. So 1 is also less than 5. Again it runs. Likewise, it increments until I equals 4. And then it increments to 5. And this becomes false, this condition. As soon as that becomes false, it exits the loop. Now let's run this. So let's build it first. I get no errors. So I run it next. As you can see, Mindex has been printed 5 times. So that was a quick introduction to C, what it is, how programs run, data types, control flow, and loops. This is just the beginning. In the next videos, we'll explore all of these concepts and more in much greater depth. So stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.